Welcome, everybody. Hello. Let's hit play and get started. Hello. Welcome. My name is Felipe Engineer. Welcome to the St. Louis Lean Construction Institute Community of Practice. Our mission at the St. Louis Community of Practice is to transform the design and construction industry. And we're doing that by connecting with individuals like yourselves, architects, engineers, contractors, and owners in our community and beyond, so that we can deliver value on all of our projects. Welcome again. This year, we've had the beautiful challenge of having to go digital. Follow us with these hashtags, LCI St. Louis COP on LinkedIn, as well as Lean Construction and Digital Lean Journey. What an amazing year 2020 has been for us. We've broken attendance records at every single event, and today we've broken another record. Thank you so much for helping be part of our journey and experience in our community. I'm going to hit on just what's coming up. In July, in August, and September, we have 3 back-to-back virtual events. In our July event, we will be covering conditions of satisfaction. You won't be hearing from me. No, you'll be hearing from an owner of a Fortune 500 company talking about how it's been used on their projects for success. Follow our LinkedIn page at LCI St. Louis COP. There, you can get all the notifications on our upcoming events, more details, and like most of you found your way to register to events like this today. And with that, I'm going to button it up and let Alex introduce himself and get started. Thank you so much for being here. All right, and while Alex takes over the screen, I want all of you to take this second and say hello in the chat right now. Just type in hello, however you do your greeting, and hit enter right away. Let's get it going. Oh, good, we got some people. Bam, it's working. Good, we're all gassed up. All right, Alex, I'm going on mute for now. We want to encourage all of you, as Alex is presenting, to go ahead and put your questions in the chat. I'll be playing and interacting with you in the chat through the entire presentation, and we do have plenty of time for Q&A at the end, where we'll say, turn on your cameras, turn on your microphones, unmute, let's have a conversation at the end. All right, if something comes up, I'll be watching, and I have the power to get Alex's attention if we need to as we go. So if we can't hear him, I'm more than happy to make him start over again. And with that, take it away, Alex.
Fantastic. Thank you, Felipe. How am I sounding out there?
Sound great.
All right, fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and get started here. If you guys are looking at my monitor, welcome. Thank you guys to the LCI St. Louis Community of Practice for hosting myself and Felipe today to talk a little bit about visual management and using something what we call Gemba here at McCarthy in the virtual design and construction team. So, title of the presentation today, Striking VDC Performance Through Visual Management. I'll be your presenter, and I'll give a brief introduction to myself here in a second. I'm the VDC director with McCarthy Building Companies based here in St. Louis, Missouri. Today is June 9th, 2020, and with that, I want to kind of give you a little bit of background of what you guys are going to hear today. In general, I'm really excited to share with you guys our visual management journey, because that's really what it has been here. Coming to McCarthy a few years ago, bringing a strategy like this to not just the virtual design and construction team, but to McCarthy here in the central region has been exciting. I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys that journey, how we use lean daily management to influence our internal and external collaboration process, which we refer to as the VDC Lifecycle process. But more importantly, how you guys can potentially start to investigate and integrate LDM concepts into your daily and weekly workflows and planning if you're not already. With that being said, give you a little bit of a context as to myself and my history in the industry. I started my career coming out of school on both the architecture and the construction management side. I'm originally from the great state of Ohio, so I'm not a native Missourian. But with my background, though, I was fortunate to be able to pick my career path, and I decided to go the construction management route after really looking at both sides of the industry and seeing where I fit in best. And it was kind of midway through my construction management experience as an operations person, kind of going through the different construction management career paths, where I found virtual design and construction. And it was midstream as I was finding that I discovered, lean concepts. And in my former company, prior to coming to McCarthy, who was also an LCI member, I learned about concepts like the last planner system, reverse phase scheduling, which most people refer to as pull planning, lean daily management, and of course Gemba. And as I started to become more adverse to what exactly those things entailed within a virtual design and construction team per se, I really started to have a deeper appreciation for data and metrics and what those things could teach us as we started to effectively track very specific metrics for how our team operated and making it more personal. And that's really the thing I'm most excited about sharing with you guys today as well. I'm going to give you guys some perspective as to how McCarthy VDC uses lean daily management. Try to make it personal and think about how you guys can start to customize this if you're not already using LDM strategies. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So the agenda for today, I'm going to give you a little bit of context into the mission and vision of what virtual design and construction is at McCarthy. I realize it might be a little bit difficult to hear the presentation without having a little bit of context. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a history in terms of how our team is set up and how we've gone about setting ourselves up to use lean daily management. So then, of course, the need, what are the strategies behind LDM for us and how we've made it personal. I'll give you guys a little bit of the approach in terms of, what are our key performance indicators, how we choose to visualize data, not just looking at it through a computer. And then what do we do from a visual management, kind of a daily huddle strategy? We do things such as Gemba huddles and walks. And then what happens when we get data and we need to analyze it and take it further, which we call a 5 why process. We'll talk about the data, right, and talking about what does that data look like in the short term and in the long term and what it allows us to do differently. And then the results, of course. What do we do with these things on a routine basis as we're doing things both in the short and the long range? And how do we communicate those results? So it's not just internal to VDC, but we communicate it both internally to our other McCarthy partners, as well as when the data sometimes needs to leave our side of the house and get out to our owners and design partners. So with that, I'm going to give you a little bit of context to VDC here at McCarthy, if you're not familiar. I like to refer to it as a culture of integrated builders. We've made a very strategic focus with VDC in recent years to become more of an integrated partner throughout the life cycle of our projects. I would say that we've definitely evolved in the industry as a whole from the design and construction side of things, but specific to McCarthy, a lot of our VDC integration in prior years definitely could have been a little bit more integrated into the project lifecycle. So 2 years ago, McCarthy's national VDC leadership team made a very specific cultural shift and focus to becoming more integrated. And in order to do that, we basically created a mantra and created a program called the Integrated Virtual Builder, which is really meant to teach all of our McCarthy partners essentially how to fish and not do all the fishing for them. And by that, what I mean is becoming more educated in the process of VDC throughout the project lifecycle, and being able to teach our partners strategically how to use the technology platforms and the technology tools that we use to drive virtual design and construction as a large national builder. So we have a mission, vision, and roadmap behind the Integrated Virtual Builder initiative. The mission, of course, is to drive integration across project delivery. The vision is to be the best integrated builder in America. And the roadmap to doing that is to have a very clear VDC lifecycle process with 4 core prongs to that approach. Of course, the most important thing that we promote here at McCarthy is BIM is the tool and VDC is the process. There's so many acronyms, as we all know, in our industry. People often interchange BIM and VDC, and they often interchange the fact that BIM is a tool and a process, and we've evolved now as an industry to where, we have lots of BIM tools, lots of BIM platforms, but weaved all together, they create VDC, and there is no one VDC flavor for everybody. Everyone's going to have their own unique flavor to it. So the way we choose to go about it is the Integrated Virtual Builder. And then, of course, probably one of the most important things to the tool and the process is how do those weave together with our people. There's definitely no right or wrong way to do technology, BIM, VDC, and process, but without clear processes and without very strong people, the technology is just technology. So we're very passionate around figuring out the process with the right people, to drive the technology. We're very big on selecting the technology in many cases last, because you got to have good people, you got to have strategic people, great thinkers, great operators that will build a very clear process, a process that's easily adopted, and then the technology should bolt on and allow us to figure out what we do from there. And then the last approach is making sure that we're integrated, and it's easy to say the word integration. It's much harder to actually execute that. So we've worked really hard here internally at McCarthy with our project partners, not just creating it ourselves, to understand how does VDC flow throughout the life cycle of the project, all the way from pursuing a project to handing the keys over to an owner for that building or site's life cycle. So just a little bit of context in terms of how our team is set up. We have what we call 3 functional teams in VDC. We have our enhanced visualization experts, which are very focused on best-in-class visualization. We have our operations and self-perform bucket, which is very focused on driving project management, or what we call VDC management. And then our field services team, which is our field specialists that use applications such as reality capture, surveying, and laser scanning. But all in all, there's a lot of cross-function that happens in VDC at McCarthy, so we're very strategic at putting people in these functional teams to be agile, integrated, and lean. And really the best way for us to do that is to have these subject matter experts, these specialists that can both cross-function, but really do kind of have a focused day-to-day approach to these functional teams, to be both strategic internally to educate our McCarthy partners on what we can do, as well as externally in working with our clients and working with our design partners directly to get them the best value for what our capabilities are in a very strategic way. Okay, so now you have the context of the team. Let's talk about why the virtual design and construction team at McCarthy wanted to pursue lean daily management. Well, I knew that coming to McCarthy a few years ago, I was not going to just sell lean daily management right out of the gate. I had to convince my partners why I found value in it in my prior life and why it worked for us then, and how to essentially McCarthyize it for us. So I came up with some things just to be able to convince the team of, there is value in it, but I want you as my partners to see the value as well. I took some low-hanging fruit, right? So at the end of the day, you begin with the end in mind. What we're trying to achieve is a fostering of better communication, collaboration, and team-based solutions. As the leader of our team, I am not coming in and trying to just sell everybody on the solutions all the time. I want the team to be autonomous in a lot of ways. The way that our cross-functional team relationships work is to empower them with a team-based strategy. So that's probably one of the most important things around lean daily management is with good data, the team can make decisions. And really, I'm coming in just evaluating the solutions, helping steer the team in the right direction. But the team is really the ones leading the charge at the end of the day because they're the ones doing the work and cross-functioning internally and externally. The second one, of course, is to correct systemic problems as you get this data back. And we'll talk more about it when we talk about short-term and long-term. But with great data, you're able to look at those problems very quickly, and the team can see those things visually rather than having to spend a lot of time to mine what the problem is or trying to come up with a visual strategy. They already have it in front of them. So essentially, not reinventing the wheel and making sure that there's things that are in place, mechanisms such as this data gathering, to not have to, fix the same problem more than once. Of course, continuous improvement is a big one. We're very lean in terms of how we operate daily, and I'll talk more about that too once we get into it. But continuous improvement should be something that we all want to strive for. And as an integrated partner, it's very important for VDC to help our partners continuously improve by seeing things in our process that allows us to be more effective than we have been in the past, which then, of course, leads to the fact that if we can all be lean, we'll all be best in class. And if we're all going to be best in class, then that means that we're putting ourselves in the best position to effectively execute project delivery from pursuit to handover. So as my partner started to understand why lean daily management has worked in the past for me and how it could work here for us at McCarthy, we started to McCarthyize it, and we came up with essentially three slogans or three sayings that speak to some of these strategic anchors here at McCarthy. The first one being measure twice, cut once equals operational excellence. So I look back on my years of experience doing rough carpentry, and one of the biggest things that I learned in a 6-man rough carpentry crew was speed and timing and quality all kind of worked hand in hand. In that residential rough carpentry business, you can't be cutting more than once. The owner of the rough framing crew was the leader of the crew. So I'm out there with, pretty much everybody that is either a co-owner of the business or people who have been doing it much longer than myself. And I really got an appreciation, a very deep appreciation for the measure twice, cut once equals operational excellence. So mapping that back to how we do things at McCarthy, we're very proud of the fact that having a process like this and what VDC is doing for project lifecycle really need to be focused on the measure twice, cut once methodology, because we're trying to move very quickly but very streamlined with our partners to drive all the project controls measures that we have in place. But operational excellence at the end of the day is really the foundation for what we're trying to do throughout project lifecycle. The second one for me is real team agility is team speed, and that really speaks to our top talent. Having the right players on the team in the right positions, doing the right things in that cross-functional team nature that I mentioned to you guys before. That really is the strength of our team is, you don't all have to run fast independently. You have to run fast together. So the team is set up in a way to where it speaks to our top talent, it speaks to our subject matter experts, and it speaks to the cross-functional setup that we have relative to their role in working with their other partners in their other buckets. And then the third one is timing is everything, really speaking to our client focus. Oftentimes, whether it's visiting a job site or really just being in the right meeting at the right time, is a big component for us effectively executing VDC throughout the project lifecycle. So especially with new processes that come on board in an organization as large as ours, there's going to be a fostering period to make sure people understand that process, understand the steps, the swim lanes, who's doing what when, the roles and responsibilities. And so making sure those ball handoffs occur effectively is definitely important for both our internal clients inside of McCarthy as well as our external clients as we work very closely with our design teams and our owner teams to drive project lifecycle. And then, of course, I leaned on what the industry was already doing. So I looked at other perspectives, right? Healthcare providers and industrial partners have leaned on lean daily management strategies for a long time. So I didn't want to reinvent the wheel per se and say, well, look at all the other construction companies that use it. Look at other industry leading organizations in the healthcare sector, in the industrial sector that do it. Why not take away some of those things? Because we do a lot of work in the healthcare market sector and the industrial market sector. So I didn't want to have to reinvent that wheel there. It was kind of self-explanatory and it was out there for everyone to see that these organizations take advantage of LDM. Why can't we? So the approach, right? So there's really these four areas that I'm going to start to go into. We'll talk specifically about our key performance indicators, how we visualize our data, how we personally and kind of in person, if you will, do our huddles and our walks to bring some personalization and some meaning to having conversations around the data. And then, of course, the 5 why and the action plan for when you get data back that may be data that needs to be investigated further, or you really have to dig a little bit deeper to get what we call a root cause analysis. And of course, as we go through this, please be sending in questions to Felipe. We'll definitely get to them. And I'll have some pauses here if Felipe needs to interrupt me as we go through this. So initial KPIs, I kind of brought these with me, but I make sure that our team vetted these. And the way that our team is set up is, as a integrated partner into operations, pre-construction, design integration, our other business units here at McCarthy, we're going to get a lot of requests for support, or we're going to get a lot of requests to help out here and there. So that's our first metric that we track is how many requests are we getting to support the company in different business units. The second one, of course, is misplanned activities. Do we have the capacity, do we have the ability to get to all of our weekly work planning items within a team of 13 people? And then R&D milestones. One thing that's very important to VDC at McCarthy is the fact that we are very passionate about tracking technology as it evolves to see if it can help us be more effective in the project lifecycle. So without doing any type of research and development around technology or around process, we would not be acting in a best-in-class or a continuous improvement model. So we really want to emphasize that, and that's why that's our third KPI. And then the fourth one is our capacity and productivity. Are we able to get to all of our operational needs as well as other needs from an administrative standpoint in the company and balance our ability to be productive and get to all of our partners' needs? So let's start off with the visual display piece of how we start to look at the KPIs before I get into the actual data. One thing that I found that was important is, as we have all these cloud collaboration platforms, not just for webinars, but for able to be bringing people into one environment and truly have meaningful collaboration, we're taking advantage of a couple different platforms to do that. I'm big on visual displays outside of what the Gemba walks and what Lean Daily Management is in general meant for. But we're leveraging platforms like Microsoft Teams to kind of co-locate everyone, be able to track their data in one place, really giving people that opportunity to have dialogue to make sure that they're able to jump on things in a bit more of a lean way. I'm definitely a big proponent of getting rid of emails or leaning down emails, if you will, and using some of these more collaborative environments to really drive dialogue, drive action items, and be able to really keep track of things. So Teams is a big benefit to our team. And as you can see on the screen here, the team likes to have fun with their Lean Daily Management a little bit. People love using GIFs and images, and they kind of go back and forth with a little bit of friendly banter as they're tracking their Gemba. We have one person on our team called the Gembassador, and he does a very good job of keeping us all in line, making sure that we're getting our Gemba numbers in on time so that we can look at the data in a timely manner. So, without any data, there's no conversation that can, or not meaningful conversation that can happen. So our Gembassador keeps us in line through Teams. This is just a screenshot of our daily report out, which has our 4 metrics on it. Everyone uses Teams to have one shared Excel spreadsheet, which they can access from their computer, from their phone, from any of their devices to add that data in at any given time. All right, so now for the fun part. So let's start to take a look at the visual letters, if you will, of Gemba. So we have 4 metrics, as I mentioned, and we're going to start off with just taking a look at what the sheets are, the kind of our summary sheets. So these letters here, and you'll see, so this is a quality metric, and we're going to start off with the first one, right? So the first one is unplanned requests for support. We have a goal of less than or equal to 5. And red, blue, green, of course, gives you your indicator if you're on target or not. So the goal, of course, and I'll show this in a second here, as you look at the metrics throughout the week, you're going to go to the letters right off the bat visually to see if we're on track or not. So our quality metric is our first one. And just so you guys have a little bit of background, I'm going to be showing you data from actually this past March. So March of 2020, I wanted to make sure to give you guys a little bit of a context as to some real data that we've just tracked recently. So first metric, quality metric, and the metrics meaning is the unplanned request for support. The second one is a delivery metric, misplanned activities, and I'll talk more about this in a second. You can see a lot of red in this sheet. We were very busy in the month of March, and we'll start to talk about why. Third one, delivery metric, R&D milestones, and as you can see, started to trend off pretty well for the month of March, and then it got red. Probably can understand why, and we'll get into that here in a minute, as you saw the unplanned request for support or misplanned activities go up. And then the fourth one is productivity. So the really positive thing, of course, is as we were as busy as we were, everyone was still on track for meeting their productivity numbers, which meant there were a lot of operational projects that were utilizing the VDC team support. So we'll start to dig into that here in a moment. So the Gemba walk, right? So the visual display of looking at these letters and looking at this data. So, having a display area, and here's an example of our display area here in Central. Those letters are posted so that anyone can walk by and see them. The idea is that the team huddles around these in person when possible to look at these metrics multiple times during the week. Now, typically how our team is set up is that we'll have a full team meeting on Monday, and then on Wednesdays and Fridays we'll do huddle meetings. The huddle meetings are meant to be about 10 to 15 minutes tops. The huddle meeting can cover anything from looking at these metrics to anything that has moved from someone's back burner to the front burner, things that are impacting weekly capacity, or things that might be coming up in the next week that might require a shift this week, either in resources or in assignments, so we can be prepared to go into that next week's set of activities. So this is our in-person board. But I want to share with you guys a little bit about what that conversation can look like as you start to get some data. So as you guys saw, one of the metrics that we had for misplanned activities was trending in the month of March. And there's 2 items specifically that stood out to me as we were looking at that. And so again, keep in mind, whether it's VDC or if it's something different, be thinking about how these kind of these subcategories of this metric, if you will, could be catered to what you or your team might be interested in looking at. So the first one was that we had project impacting activities that were being pushed every single day. And we had more than 20 of these. So that kind of started my questioning with the team of, what is happening that is more important than the things that you said were important for this week, right? The second one is being overcommitted in general. So there was just a lot of overcommitments, whether a person had 5 tasks planned for that day or 5 planned for that week. There was still a very big trend in people having to shift things day to day that would inevitably push into that next week. So I noticed those, and we started to have some good conversation during our Gemba walks around, okay, what are some things that you guys can fix in the short term to try to get back on track with some of these? And everything is definitely very question-based, and it's very open-ended in the Gemba walk. But one of the most important things about the Gemba walk is you're not trying to fix systemic problems in that walk. You're just trying to identify what is happening, what is trending, and then set a plan to go forward. And that's either going to be a 5 why or a just do it. And we'll go into that here in a second.
Hey, Alex, before you shift over, just want a quick note to everybody who's attending. The session's being recorded, so you'll be able to watch this back whenever you like. We just ask that you put your safety first. And if you're commuting and you're the driver, we encourage you to connect back in. You'll get a chance to watch this uninterrupted when you're safe and distracted free. So appreciate putting your safety first. As priceless as Alex is, we're recording his pricelessness so that you can watch it anytime you like, safe and sound. So thank you with that. Alex, go ahead, pick it back up. That was just perfect transition to the Gemba. Someone was transitioning from Gemba to Gemba, so I just thought it was the right time. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Appreciate it, Felipe. So yeah, just as a little bit of a zoom in more as to what we were looking at with project impacting requests for support that were changing our ability to get to our planned activities, and then the overcommitted activities as well. So the 5 why, right? So if we have a scenario where we want to take a deeper look at something, and the Gemba walk again is really it's not the time, because they're short, it's not really the time to dig deep into it and go into a root cause analysis. We'll create what's called a 5 why process, and the team will start some dialogue around the why in the Gemba, but 1 or 2 team members will start to take that action item forward and really work with the team offline to get to a root cause analysis for the why and the trends. So as an example, actually about a year ago, so it was March of 19, we had kind of a similar situation happen. It's interesting that it's actually happening a year later, but for different reasons. And we're actually going through a 5 why right now about the trend in our data from this past March. But a year ago, we had noticed that we had an unplanned help request trend from projects midway through construction. A lot of our requests right now actually are coming earlier in our projects, so that's why it's a little bit different now. So we're trending in a very positive direction in the project lifecycle timeline. But let's just say last year, we had a lot of mid-flight, mid-construction trends in our data, which caused us to have unplanned work affect our capacity. So this is kind of how the 5 why process works, right? You essentially ask why 5 times to get to a root cause. So I started to ask the team these questions, and the first why, of course, was well, why are these coming in during mid-flight and construction? Well, we learned that several of the requests coming in, we were not connected to these teams prior to the start of construction. So the second why, of course, to why are we not connected? We started to learn that we didn't have awareness in certain areas of the company as to how VDC could support their projects earlier on in the project prior to the start of construction. So the third why of why was that awareness not there? Well, we didn't have a VDC core service estimate generated for how our approach to the VDC process on that project would be implemented. So the fourth one to why did we not have that core service estimate outline defined was we were not aware that some of these projects were either in pursuit or they were in pre-construction. So again, just kind of working backwards and getting to what our root cause was. And why we were not connected as we started to find was we weren't aware that the project was awarded, or we did not have that connectivity for the project kickoff meeting to have an internal VDC conversation around what our strategy would be for those projects. So that really kind of drove an action plan for us to say, okay, so if we need to be aware of project wins, if operations and pre-con just weren't connected to us as the project kickoff began, and if our pursuit team was not aware of some of the capabilities for this specific project, we have some action items that we can take. And so we took some very strategic approaches to getting notifications, meeting with some of our regional leadership, and meeting with some of our operations and more client-focused partners to have those things incorporated into kind of our strategic planning and kind of operations best practices. And that really started to drive some positive results for us, and we started to notice the data shifted. And so again, starting to go to the data side of things and collecting good data to get to drive better decisions. As we started to go through 2019 and the Integrated Virtual Builder initiative really started to kick in for us, we had a lot more conversation around being connected earlier in our projects. Project planning, very strategic and specific approach to what the VDC lifecycle process can do for some of our projects that are either more complex, projects that have more challenging phasing, projects that have owner requirements that are specific to BIM and VDC. And then we started to look at that data as 2019 went down the path, and we started to become involved earlier and earlier, which allowed us to pre-plan, which drove a decrease in activities that were affecting our weekly capacity. But the only way to do that, though, is to track those things on a monthly basis and have that conversation. So one of the biggest things, of course, that our ambassador does for us to keep us honest with ourselves is to keep track of this data each month, but also have a summary so that we can look at this trend throughout the course of time. And that's just an example that you're seeing on the screen here. So the root cause analysis process, while we don't do one all the time because it's definitely data driven, we do strategic planning at the end of every year, and we do a lot of activities as a group that looks at our bridges and our barriers. And it was really cool over the course of the last 2 years to see something like that in that 5Y trend down and start to look at new bridges and new barriers that we have to conquer as a group as we move forward in the industry. And the Integrated Virtual Builder Initiative really has connected a lot of a lot of bridges, if you will, to the process of gathering really meaningful data and then sharing that with our partners so that we can be as strategic as possible. So the team does a lot of these things, both internally with our group as well as externally with our operations, pre-con, business development, other partners in McCarthy, to make sure that the data is visualized outside of our group. And just as an example, we do a lot of things with like tracking and projections. And the biggest thing that I would say as we start to do things like this is to, again, not only get them up on the board outside in the room, but make sure that we're reporting out with these things so that people do have awareness to, again, the how, the why of where VDC is plugging into the life cycle, and how do we be most effective at scaling and tailoring and making our approach project specific and potentially client specific. So short and long range, and I have another example of a planning tool that we use. I'd shared teams there. We use Power BI. We're using a platform called Rike right now to kind of track our overall team support. Having a team of 13 people, one of our biggest strategies with that cross-functional team nature is almost kind of tracking things like mini projects within our group, since we're very integrated into a lot of our projects across the region and across the country. So just having a good visual dashboard to look at, 2-week look-aheads, 6-week look-aheads, very operationally. In a prior life, I did a lot of construction scheduling, so I'm passionate about seeing things in that traditional CPM Gantt style. But the biggest thing that I do when I look at this data is I kind of do my backwards pass or my reverse phase schedule, and I'm going to look down the line, and I'm going to look, 2 months ahead, 6 months ahead, looking at things like quarterly projections and going backwards and seeing where the team has capacity now as opposed to where the team is going to need to have capacity, and starting to really plug in, placeholders, if you will, for VDC lifecycle integration down the line so that the team can kind of visualize that and prepare to make decisions based on our data, start to make those earlier so that we don't have situations where we have projects in mid-flight asking for our support when we're engaged with them early from pursuit right out of the gate.
Alex, we got a quick question. Ballpark, what's the cost for a single license of Rike?
The cost for a single license of Rike. I can put you in touch with the right guy. It's definitely customized. So okay. Rike's a great tool, but they definitely have customized licensing platforms. We are actually in a pilot phase right now with Rike. We don't have an enterprise agreement with them, so we are evaluating this tool right now. Probably one of the best things that I like about Rike in terms of being lean is it incorporates a lot of lean features, right? So it has, and I'm not trying to make a sales pitch for Rike per se, but they do some really cool things with Scrum methodology, CPM scheduling, workloading and resourcing. and they kind of put it all in one bucket. And it's really cool to also see the integrations that they're doing. As an example, there's an integration with our time tracking system here at McCarthy, and it'll tie into Reich. Trying to start to figure out if it can tie into our accounting system. So we're starting to test some of these integrations. But I love the ability for people to visualize however they want to visualize, their lean strategy, whether it's, cards, whether it's workloading, whether it's the Gantt style view, calendar view. It's just very flexible. And they have some analytics in here, some analytics graphs that we're going to start testing to actually look at some AI and really look at data that we've probably never looked at before in terms of, someone's calendar relative to their timesheet, relative to their OneNote, and, actually having red flags pop up saying, hey, you're over capacity based on the data that I'm reading. How are you able to do your job right now? So we're trying to get some of those things cross collaborating internally with the technology. Really excited about this platform and seeing where it can go. Anything else for right now, Felipe?
No, keep going.
All right, cool. So the timely communications piece, I mentioned earlier, kind of the timing is everything. So that's why I think the VDC lifecycle process that we've created, that's specific to how McCarthy does business, is so important for us from a development standpoint of our internal and external partners, is just knowing when to engage, right? And so if you have good data and you have an understanding of, well, if we're not having enough conversation at project kickoff, or if we're still not quite hitting all of our cylinders in one aspect of our project delivery, when is the best time to plug in based on timely communication of when things traditionally happen in our life cycle. And so that's where I foster with the team, being at the point of attack, being out on our job sites, being in the right meetings with our clients, making sure that we're asking the right questions based on what our integration strategy is, how our delivery model is set up, both from a contractual standpoint, from a execution standpoint, and so. But it really always goes back to the people side of communicating, right? I try to foster the don't send emails, pick up the phone, go to the point of attack, really foster that communication connectivity and be in the right place at the right time to have meaningful conversation. So with that, I go to the awareness, engagement, and improvement part of our results. As we get this data, we're having meaningful conversation. We're having it at the right time. I made the comment about point of attack, both from an office standpoint, from a job site standpoint. The only way that we're going to be best in class with our life cycle approach is continuous improvement and refinement. And I've gotten that data in many ways in my past experience. I foster the team to kind of build their own brand around how they want to gather that data and grow their relationship with their internal and external partners. But the point of attack is probably the most important part about it. So bringing the data from inside the office here with the Gemba board and really starting to do things at the point of attack, such as plus delta meetings, helps us really gather that data from not just McCarthy partners, but trade partners, our owners, our design partners, and having that plus delta to understand that continuous improvement to then backfeed that into how our team visualizes and tracks our data. So with that, I'm going to start to open up a little bit to the questions of, who is ready to start doing lean daily management, and if you are doing it, what questions specifically do you have about how our team does it, and any opportunities that you might see for us or yourself?
Felipe? All right, so we got one question in the chat ready for you. It's perfect timing. This question comes from Harsh, and he's asking about additional VDC services as a cost. His question is this, Alex: how do you quantify the KPIs in terms of dollar value saved to justify VDC service costs?
That's a great question. Very challenging question to answer. What I would start off with is this. The key performance indicators for what we do is primarily focused on the expectation that there is going to be a strategic VDC approach for every project. No one project's the same. So a lot of the historical data that we've gathered from a VDC team in terms of project savings, when during the project lifecycle is it best to get involved, and how we can help mitigate our risk, how we improve the coordination of our projects, those types of things. We'll build some metrics in for those types of things. But in terms of metrics specific to gathering like our KPIs and our data, I would say that we haven't quite evolved to that complete level yet where we're tying it to a cost, primarily because we don't want it to really be about the cost from a life cycle standpoint. We want to be an integrated approach to how we do each one of our projects and work with that project team from pursuit to project kickoff to scale and tailor what we do. I'd say one of the biggest challenges in the industry that I've seen with other VDC teams that I've either been on or that I've worked with. I have peers in the industry that I talk to all the time that we work with and work in concert with in other regions, is making it less a service conversation and more of an integration conversation. Because it shouldn't be about the cost at the end of the day. It should be about what does the project need and what is really that approach strategically for that project's life cycle, depending on who our design partner is. Does the owner have requirements? What is the right way to execute this project, and then scale and fit that to that project's need to make it value added. And I would say that's probably the last thing I would comment on is the value added piece. The only way that it really works throughout the life cycle of a project is to get our client feedback from the beginning to ensure that the value that we're providing is also the value that they want.
I like it. So that's an open question for Alex. He's pausing for you all to unmute yourself or use the chat. This is one little spot here before we continue on. We do have some other pre-made questions loaded to get the conversation started, but feel free to unmute or chat up. Here we go. We've got a question from Dave. Thank you, Dave. You've been a good video participant as well. I'm waving at you right there. Yep, I see you, Dave. Dave wants to know, have we replaced RFI logs with constraint logs?
That's a good one. Do you want to take that one, Felipe, or you want me to?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So the answer is no, we haven't. Those are two distinct functions. Constraint logs, for those of you that don't know, is something that's used often with weekly work planning or last planner system of production controls. It has to do with the pull scheduling system. In design, sometimes they're also known as issues logs or things that are bottlenecks or stoppers of work. And a request for information tends to be a contract-specific entity, and it's a vehicle within standard AIA contracts and others in order to ask formally a question that may or may not initiate a design change and potentially a request for income change where a contractor gets paid for change services. There's nothing wrong with getting paid, am I right? I'm right.
Hey.
Yeah, thank you, Dave, for laughing. I got dad jokes all day on without delay, so hope to answer your question. Those are two separate things, and often I see projects have both. Sometimes I see projects only with RFI logs. I've seen more projects without constraint logs than with.
Yeah, Felipe, one thing I would say to that too, because that is a great question specific to project delivery. You know, one of the things that we're trying to promote in the industry is, and you kind of said it, but like an issue log, issue management. A big part of VDC management for us in general is to track risk and to make sure that everyone's aware of that risk. So we're trying to utilize technology around every corner to grow awareness of project risk earlier, and trying to be more focused on issue management and issue tracking in advance of the RFI process to really try to drive meaningful RFIs and meaningful Q&A that's contractually required. As opposed to things that if we just collaborated more, if we have the ability to be in more of a visually based environment and have more of that partner trust, we can hopefully mitigate that RFI process and really just be focused on meaningful questions, meaningful RFIs with lots of data, lots of value added there, as opposed to just bogging down a process that historically eats up a lot of time on a project and potentially just becomes very cumbersome.
Awesome. Looks like that's it, Alex. You can pick it back up.
Okay. You want to jump into a few of these here with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So one question that I kind of get sometimes is just, kind of the obvious one, I guess, maybe is, how is VDC really connected to the project lifecycle? And I guess the short answer to this is when you start to look at the strategy for connecting construction technology to the mitigation of risk, to setting ourselves up for success as a complete project team, not just McCarthy, but our design team, our owner team. You're starting to put these project controls mechanisms, if you will, in place to enhance the ability to coordinate, communicate, idea exchange. And so that project lifecycle concept really needs to be adopted by the whole team. And so I guess, one of the things that makes the most sense in any project is to have that initial partnering session, if you will, to really talk about how you're going to use technology, how you're going to use strategy to drive the most effective project delivery that you can possible. Because you can't just have one team member doing it. If it was just us doing it by ourselves, then there's not going to be that value added delivery realized by all the stakeholders. And so the one thing I would just say is I promote those early conversations, partnering, getting on the same page with the use of technology to drive the project delivery from a life cycle perspective.
Yeah, that's a good one. And to add on to that, we've got some feedback from Harsh in the chat about that. It's still, he's saying there's a lot of clients that still want to use the traditional design, then bid, then build, or even design build rather than integrated project delivery. Integrated project delivery is the smallest out there as far as contract type. A lot of people, especially if you've recently been in school, you've read about it, you've heard about it, you went to a conference, you're like, ooh, IPD, and it's like this new shiny thing, but you got to recognize that a lot of folks don't have experience with it yet. And some of that, enter into a conversation with them about what it entails. To just raise the awareness. Like a lot of the things you saw in Alex's presentation about the visuals, when people on the team can see what's going on, it's much easier to act. But if people can't see things because they're invisible or they're unaware, it's an uphill battle. So it's really good to engage and have some conversations about that. And then the follow on from Harsh there, Alex, is do we see clients changing project delivery system?
Absolutely. From what I've seen from a delivery standpoint is we're starting to find owners asking more questions about, how to improve their standards, whether that is BIM execution planning, whether it's BIM standards, whether it's, how can our projects be more lean from a team-based delivery perspective. Maybe in advance of the contract delivery method changing, I see owners asking more questions about how do we get value with collaborating between design partner, construction partner, and owner partner, and they're looking for ideas like this to get everyone around, right? Because again, if they're going to get the value out of it, we all have to do it together, or at least have a strategy that's co-delivered. So one of the things that we are starting to do to move the needle is, at least I've been pushing for, co-authored project delivery plans. We call them, BIM execution plans or, VDC Lifecycle plans, but it requires everyone to be involved. So if the interest is there, which a number of owners I've talked to, the interest is definitely there, and we're all willing to do it together, that can really be that value added approach. If we're really trying to enhance schedule, if we're trying to enhance quality, we're trying to enhance the ability for the project to, realize potential savings, really get good data metrics out of working more collaboratively as industry partners. So I am seeing it out there, and it's not just on the West Coast. So it is happening.
Got
here
that right.
as well.
It's happening in our southern states, and I know some of you are calling in from way down in the southern states, like almost touching the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. So happy to, and some of our international folks as well. We're definitely seeing clients, even on traditional design, bid, build, incorporating some of these lean approaches, even though it's not in the contract. It's amazing. I was just working with the team last week in the beautiful state of Texas, and they were talking about what other lean approaches can we bring to our design as we're getting ready for construction to help get us what we need, which is, in their case, is building a hospital. So it's just great to see teams like pulling from each other and utilizing each other's resources, recognizing that there's folks on the team that have some experience with it, and then how do they share that and leverage that with the others and kind of go along together. You don't have to start at the contract. Don't let the contract be an excuse not to embody continuous improvement, lean daily management. As anyone can be a Gembassador, right, Alex?
Absolutely.
Great feedback. What's our next question, Alex? We got.
So I think the next one was, how does office versus job site teams implement lean daily management respectively? And this is one to empower people to take this and apply it to your own teams, right? So whether it's, construction office or job site or whatever folks on the phone are doing in their daily lives, the metrics can change, the visual display can change. You just got to make it personal. And so what I would encourage folks to do is really think about meaningful metrics that are specific to your line of work, or things that are very repeatable, or things that can be forecasted if tracked appropriately, and really start to think about, how to bring that, to the point of attack, if you will, with having those walks, those meaningful conversations, and finding time to look at that data on a repeatable basis to drive action, to drive change.
Yeah, and I want to add on to the job site how they implement it. But before I do that, Alex, can you release screen control? I want to get a nice beauty shot of all of the people in here. We've got at the peak we were at almost 60 people. We're down to 46, and I think this is the best view I can get with. So let me do a couple screenshots here so I don't get in trouble with my sponsor. I was going to take one screenshot of everyone here. Thank you so much for all of you that sharing your video. I appreciate you sharing your video. So on the job sites, it's great and important to make sure you start with the needs. Like Alex started with his team on, based on his experiences and some things that he knew that would be valuable for his team. So a lot of the visual management we see, thank you everybody for turning your cameras on, you brave souls. A lot of the visual management we see where teams get started at the project level is just as simple as putting up logistics plans and schedules and important safety information. Don't take for granted those visual cues. Those visual things that I can see that communicate information are great things that are starting points with people and teams. We've even had projects in the beautiful state of Illinois, not in your guys' backyard for a lot of you, start with putting up submittal information, where things are in terms of procurement, feeding a schedule that's in play, so that foremen can recognize themselves, their company's logos and names, and see that and then engage with our people and with each other about when things are things and when things are coming. But those are real simple things to do, to just take some wall real estate and get some information on. Like you can see in Ryan's picture, he's got the beautiful country of Canada at the north. I was going to say United States, didn't you, Ryan? Yeah. He's got the beautiful country of Canada up there, just in case he wants to go on vacation, right? No, he's got the United States, right? It's the United States map, but that's an easy way to see where are we, where our projects are, and it's a nice visual indicator that helps. And the same is true on your project. So as you're starting this off, Alex showed a lot of Excel spreadsheets, and don't think you can go right to screenshotting his Excel and going from there. That's not where you need to start. You start with what's going to communicate, like what information are people missing now that would be helpful and useful and valuable. Right, Alex? Everything you've done with your team has been valuable. Has your team challenged you, Alex? I got a question from a direct message, an anonymous soul here. Wanted to ask you, how long did it take to sell the team on getting to the level that you are today?
That's a great question. And, just being totally transparent. Yeah, I mean, I got some challenges back with it because people didn't have a history of data to go off of, right? They were just going off of what I said that I've tracked in my past. But as the team, I'd say it probably took about a full year for people, honestly, to really start to see the metrics trend over time. And as VDC became more integrated into project lifecycle through the IVB initiative, the data started to trend. It started to trend up in terms of requests, and it started to trend up in terms of the number of team members that we had. And as they started to see the team grow and the requests grow and the inability to react to everything during the week, then the wheels started turning as to how can we start to do a deeper dive into this data and get ahead of some of these requests, make sure that we have enough team members in the right functional teams in the group to be able to react. And again, this isn't specific to VDC. This can be applied to any team, but you got to have the data, right? You got to have the background information to be able to make informed decisions. So, that's really the proof is in the pudding, right? You're going to see and believe once you've collected enough to see the paper trail.
Absolutely. And we've got, I want to respect everyone's time. We're down on the final 5 minutes. If you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question live, Alex is here for your question, enjoyment, and answering. And we just got another one into the chat. So let me ask the chat while you guys get brave. So Matt says, as a GC, we're trying to plan ahead to provide consistent templates for things like pre-construction kickoff meetings, to provide all contractors the same information on contact info, address, etc., job-specific things. It helps us to know that being consistent is and fairly giving everyone the same information. That's a good one, Matt. That's a great share. You are good GC, Matt. And I'm a recovering general contractor. I was trying to be more of a partner. So I like that, Matt. You're setting a good example for all of us other GCs and trade partners and designers on the call. Thank you for that share. Does anyone else have a question they want to ask Alex in the final 4 minutes before we turn into a pumpkin?
Philippe, I have 2 more slides here I can cover.
Yeah, put one up.
All right. So I guess the last one, because I often ask myself this question on a regular basis, is, what is next for us, right? How does lean daily management evolve for what we do moving forward? And of course, kind of also goes back to, the data that we're gathering. If the data starts to trend differently, the conversation can be very different. But what I would say in terms of, where we go next is, as project lifecycle becomes more integrated, as we are doing things more progressively as an organization with our industry partners, I'm going to start to look to our industry partners to participate more in our Gemba process, and maybe not necessarily internally to our team, but at our job sites, right? I would love to start to see this grow more on our projects that are collaboratively delivered. So, whether it's IPD or design build or not, even with at-risk projects where, we're not under a same contractual delivery method, we're still all very dependent upon each other as stakeholders to deliver the best project possible. I don't see any reason why we could not benefit as a project delivery team around lean daily management concepts, even if we're not held to the same contractual agreement. It's really about understanding the value of being the most effective team possible and buying into value added where appropriate, and having our owner partners bought in as well. So I'd love to see this move well beyond what my team is doing and deeper into the industry as a whole.
Yeah, me too. I love it.
So the last slide here, Felipe, this call to action for everybody. I do believe that there can be a takeaway, and no matter what stage of a project you're in or what your setup is in your current organization for lean daily management. But what I would like to encourage folks to do is, foster the attitude of anyone can do this with the right metrics. So select meaningful metrics and find the best way to make it visual, whether it's on people's devices, whether it's on a board, I've seen Gemba boards posted on the project job site, in the, inside the building or right outside the pod area for the morning huddle meetings. Because what does it do? It generates continuous dialogue, right? And as humans, the only way that we really accomplish a lot of things is through that regular dialogue, correspondence, not just written, but the verbal, the visual. That continuous dialogue is what's going to drive us to be a better industry. It's going to drive us to be more collaborative, be more integrated, and do the things that are value added and protect our risk as a full project delivery team, not just independently. So that'd be my call to action for you guys. And if there are any other questions, people can feel free to get a hold of me. I love talking about project lifecycle and just in general how we're evolving as an industry. So I would encourage you guys to employ some of these strategies in your daily lives and see if you guys can make Gemba and lean daily management work for you.
Perfect close. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to hang on for a little bit longer and answer some questions, so stand by. Just want to thank everybody for being here. There's a request, Alex, if you could drop your contact info in the chat box right now, it would be awesome.
I can do that.
So I'm going to stop that, but thank you, everybody. You are a great audience, so well-behaved and so civilized. Appreciate all of that. I'm hitting stop now at exactly 1 hour.